There it is. Well, hello. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Late Night Coffee Talk. I am back. I was not here last week because, contrary to popular belief, I am not invincible. I am not immune to every disease on the planet, right? And so, not that it was. I guess it was a disease. I don't know, illness, maybe a better word. I mean, disease makes it sound like I'm a leper. Anyway, I was not here last week, and so I appreciate your patience. It's like things are coming up where we're like on this every other week rotation. I don't like it. I like our every week thing. So I think we're. Oh wait, we won't be back to it because next Thursday's Thanksgiving. So I guess we are sort of on an every other week. Well, be that as it may, I'm glad that we're here together tonight, and thank you guys so much for all the well wishes when I had to, make a call last Thursday. I was definitely not up to it. But thank you all for wishing me good health. You guys do that all the time. Like even when it's a scheduling conflict, you guys are like, take care of yourself. And I think that many of you are more concerned about my health than I am, and I am very appreciative of that. Anyway, before I tear off into this, let me get all the business out of the way. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement, and this is Late Night Coffee Talk. This is that time during the week where I take a break from working on Texas independence, pour another cup of the Go Juice, and fire up the camera, and we have a conversation. You guys typically drive it with your questions, and you have a passel of them. Sometimes I've got to put guardrails on it, but generally anything and everything's on the table. And based off the questions I've got, there's a few, but some of you guys are apparently curious about the, Monday. This Monday was the 20th anniversary of the foundation of the TNM. Many of you have some questions about that, and I'm looking forward to tackling some of those. And I don't know. I think maybe you guys just have a good time watching me wax nostalgic. But you have a lot of questions about those, and we'll talk about all those things. So tonight, I have a sneaking suspicion there's going to be a coffee talk dedicated to that sort of thing right there, because there's a whole passel of those questions. But there are some other outliers too. Anyway, as I said, late night coffee talk. If you would like to ask a question, you can email it to coffeetalk@thnm.org. You'll see it down here on the crawler here in just a second, or the scroller, excuse me. Don't want to get my terminology wrong. But also, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, just drop your question in the chat. While you're there, be sure to like and share and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified anytime we post new videos or when we go live. And of course, super chats are active, so we appreciate that. And of course, become a YouTube channel member. We would appreciate that as well, where you can get some access to some exclusive content. And oddly, we have been pouring through the archives, looking at some really deep cuts of videos, honestly, that I didn't even know that we had or had forgotten, right? So be sure you do that. Become a YouTube channel member. Additionally, if you're watching on X, just, drop your comment on the chat over there on the video, and kind of the same thing, but be sure to like it and share it and do all those things. And same thing if you're on Facebook. If you have a question, go drop it in the comments underneath the chat, underneath the video. Sorry, I keep saying chat because I think their interface has now gone to a chat, right? Anyway, while you're there, be sure to like and comment and share, do all the Facebook things. Look, I know it gets repetitive, me asking for these things all the time, but it really helps. When you comment or you interact with these videos, it helps with the algorithm. It helps more people see them. It actually helps people who would like to see them that no longer get to see them because the algorithm keeps them from doing it. And that's across all platforms, right? Final one, if you're watching on Rumble, because we are nice and connected there now, you can drop your question in the chat there. And, same thing with Rumble. Do all the cool things. Give the big thumbs up and all that other stuff. And, then we'll all be happy, right? And I already told you can email And if anybody's asking, I'm not still sick. This is me needing caffeine to just continue to push through because I am a bit of a workaholic and my sleep schedule has been trashed this week. So anyway, wow, as I said, 20th anniversary was Monday, right? That was the 20th anniversary. November 17th was the 20th anniversary of the founding of the Texas Nationalist Movement. And as such, in the run up to that, and for another project that I'm working on for the TNM, I have had a tremendous opportunity to roll back through a lot of archives and just marvel at how far we've come, right? As an organization, as a movement. You guys saw, if you haven't seen the article that I wrote for the Texian Partisan about the 20th anniversary, I would encourage you to go take a look at it. Because it was, when you kind of lay everything out there from that moment in 2005 until today, and just kind of look at the trajectory. You know, it's a lot of times easy for people to come in like right now and make all kind of, oh, you know, you guys, it just doesn't seem like you've done anything. And it's like, guys, you don't understand how much we've actually done. That just, when somebody says that, it tells me that they're not paying attention, right, to the world around them, much less what we're doing, because it's pretty incredible. And that article, I'm going to be honest with you, that article, it was hard to keep. It was a long article, but it was really hard to shorten down. You know, what do you cut out? What do you chop from the history that got us from, you know, a room with about a half dozen of us to right here and right now? What do you chop out? To me, nothing on that timeline is unimportant. Not a single thing, good or bad. Not a thing. Not a thing is any more or less than the other ones. I mean, there's always big moments, right? But really and truly, you know, every second between then and now is like a child. How do you pick your favorite one? Well, how do you publicly pick your favorite one, right? I'm gonna get messages from my kids now. Mission accomplished. All right, let's get down to your questions. I've got a parcel over here via email, but let me hit up the chat for. Oh man, I got questions everywhere. What do you guys want, a bonus episode? All right. Hey, big thank you right out of the chute to Ron Raffoon. Yeah. Hey, what's going on with all the numbers after everybody's names? Is this a new YouTube thing? Because it sure looks like all of them are YouTubey. Anyway, thank you very much, Ron. He gifted 10 TNM YouTube channel memberships, and it is greatly appreciated. Man, you're doing that all the time, and I just, it's very generous and very, very much appreciated. So thank you so much, Ron. Excuse me. Okay. I literally just did this one, right? What are the numbers after? I don't know, Sana. I don't know why everybody's got numbers all of a sudden. This is new. I'm gonna have to look it up as soon as we get off of here. But we'll take a look at that. Howdy from the Netherlands. Hey, the Netherlands. Howdy from Texas. Hello. Thank you for tuning in to us tonight. Really do appreciate it. Okay. You know, this is a fun one, right? Because I actually have some of these. I actually have some questions like this in the email, so this will give me an opportunity. Chisholm Ranch says, question, is Texas going to be run under the Constitution of Texas or Sharia law after we tax it? I guess you've seen the news. Islam and Christianity cannot coexist in the same country. I have seen the news, and I've gotten a lot of questions, not just tonight, but over the last several coffee talk live streams, right, about this whole thing with Epic City and Sharia law. Got a phone call from a legislator who called me just the other day, not specifically to talk about this, But this is where the conversation ended up, and it was only just a few days later that Abbott made his declaration, and it's a real interesting thing. And I don't know really how to unpack it all, because I cannot sit here and say that I agree with Sharia courts. I don't, right? And this idea that Sharia courts are taking over is actually a bit of a myth, right? But it's rooted in a bit of truth. Okay. So I'm going to take you back to 1996, when the Republican Texas movement was firing on all cylinders back before it spectacularly imploded. And in 1996, one of the things that was happening with a lot of people that were associated with the Republic of Texas is the Republic of Texas movement established its own common law courts, right? So its own courts. And you have to go to the core of the argument there, and that's not up for discussion. I'll get you there at some point. But I have to talk about this to set up where we go to talk about these Sharia courts. Anyway, so they set up their own courts, and what they would do is they would sue public officials or other people in these common law courts, which were recognized pretty much by only the people that were using them, right? And so they would ostensibly file a suit in these courts. They would win this judgment. They would prepare lien paperwork. Then they go down to the county clerk and file the lien. And the county clerks they were filing them because they didn't know any different. The paperwork looked like a legitimate lien issued by a court. They didn't know any different. And it was all just a big kind of pain in the butt for a lot of people until a lien was filed against the state of Texas and locked them up. Like, it was called the eminent domain lien. It was pretty hilarious when you think about it. But long story short is, at the time, Attorney General Dan Morales was doing battle with the Republic of Texas movement. And that guy's a slime ball, okay? But one of the things that came out of that was either it was an Attorney General's opinion or something from one of the courts, and I don't remember. But essentially, it said that the offense here was about these liens was not that they were illegitimate. It's that they had effectively drugged someone else under the jurisdiction of this purported court without their permission, to essentially say, we're going to drag you in here, whether you recognize it or not, and the judgment goes. And so, there was obviously some discussion about whether or not the rule of law applied, aka equally. In other words, you were making valid claims of justice, blah, blah, blah. But what it did was that ruling from the opinion from the Attorney General or from the judge, like I said, I can't remember, essentially set the stage to a certain extent here in Texas about how Texas deals with those sorts of courts, right? So in 1997, there was Morales pushed for a whole bundle of laws that dealt with primarily filing of fraudulent liens was one of them. But there was this whole series of laws. I mean, they were called the Republic of Texas laws, right? And what they did was they dealt with various aspects of the things that were going on with those courts. And so what you essentially had was this sort of precedent here that was kind of surprising to anyone, because if you break down what was said, it was this, is that if the parties agreed, then it could be binding. Now, that's a blanket statement. That's not all the nuance that goes along with it, right? Because you can't go in there and they can't mete out criminal punishments. I mean, it basically it takes the place of mediation or arbitration, right? It kind of operates in the same way. And in fact, if you surrender to the jurisdiction of one of those courts, and the ruling comes out and it was, factually based and wasn't thumbs on the scales and anything else, someone could take that ruling and, go essentially get a legitimate state court to enforce it. And so, you've got this situation where you have separate courts, right? The Roman Catholic Church has canonical courts, right? Judaism, they've got their own sort of internal religious-based court system as well. And so the state of Texas, when it comes to Sharia courts, is kind of in a weird position because of the way that they have essentially positioned themselves historically on this issue. And yet again, I'm going to go ahead and expose something else to you that you need to think about, is that the reason that these courts can exist in the first place is because of the federal government. The federal government has laws on the books that essentially recognizes, and because of the state people believing that the federal government is almighty, federal preemption, those courts are actually federally protected. So, when Greg Abbott comes out and declares no Sharia, there will be no Sharia law in Texas. Well, maybe, right? Under that system, because yet again, depending on what aspects of it is it the civil sort of courts, equity portion of it? Because remember, I'm not an attorney here, but is it the equitable part of it where they're establishing a court of equity to make things able to balance the scales, to deal with internal matters, because if that's part of it, then the feds have basically got that covered and the state's hands are tied. But if they're trying to impose things like, female genital mutilation or, any of these other kind of crazy things, well, that's where the state can step in. And I think if you look at some of the things that Abbott has said about this and some of the other people that are dealing with the more legal aspects of this, you will flat out see that they're trying to do everything they can not to step on a landmine, because they are basically one step to the left or to the right of blowing their legs off. And it's because we participate in the federal system. We really don't have a lot of leeway or sovereignty in this particular matter. So, to your point, to everyone else who's asked, again, you can go back and look at some of the previous where I talk about Epic City, which I think also is interesting when you look at that all of those federal investigations that were open have essentially been closed, right? So, is it a Fed failure? Is this a situation with cultural assimilation? Is it, what is the situation? I think is the question. Just let me be clear, unless anybody is unambiguous or think. Let me be clear in case anyone thinks I'm being ambiguous. There we go. I told you I needed coffee. I'm tired. So there is no ambiguity. See, look how much better it was after that one sip of coffee. This stuff is magic. No ambiguity. The idea that you can have two or more sets of laws or rules that people can abide by is absolute anathema to Texas independence and Texas nationalism. It cannot be. You cannot have two parallel systems of law, not under one sovereignty. And you can have no tolerance for those who pursue that. You either want a constitutional republic or you want this other, whatever that other is. And anyone who wants that other is effectively saying that we don't want a constitutional republic and the rule of law. So you got to be real careful and real suspicious of people like that, and you got to push back against it. So there is no ambiguity there. It runs contrary to Texas nationalism, period. Okay. Thank you for your question. Okay, Cheryl says, how proud are we all that the Aggies are ranked number 3? Cheryl wants to start a fight in the chat. I just know it, right? It actually is kind of cool, right? But anyway, that's a good look. You want to start a fight in a chat, just mention Texas college football or barbecue, maybe chili recipes. Okay, let's get over here to the, here we go. Cheesy says, proud Texas nationalist since 2019. Thank you so much for being here. All right, I got to get over here to these emails or I'm going to start getting hate mail. All right, so I want to do this first before I start ripping off into these. I want to just acknowledge Caleb has sent me an email like the 7th, a week ago. So like literally every week since the 3rd, wanting to know about something about, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but it's about Texas culture. And so I'm going to tell you, Caleb, I got it. And I'm going to respond to it, but I'm not going to respond to it on Coffee Talk because the question you asked is important enough that it needs to be committed to writing. I am writing the response to your question, and we will have it posted on the Texas Partisan probably in 24 to 48 hours or less. Right? I'm almost done with it, but you're gonna, everybody is gonna, you guys are gonna want to do that, because if you have any question, because honestly it kind of plays into this last discussion about Sharia law and things like that, and it deals with the aspect that we have of cultural independence. Well, what is our culture, right? If we're going to talk about cultural independence. And I can tell you, the first time that anyone ever asked me that was probably 2015 at the old office, and we got a visit from a group of students from the University of Wisconsin in Platteville. They were geography majors, okay? Something you don't hear very often, but they were. And so they came and spent the day with us, talking all about Texas. And essentially what they were doing was recreating a study that had been done, like, I don't know, 50 years ago or whatever. They were recreating that study, and they were going place to place, state to state, to try to do this and understand culture and how that, and I guess it's relation to map making. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the point was, but they literally, that was the first question. What is Texas culture? And, and you sit there for a second, you think, it's rare that you get a question that you've never been asked. And that one I had never been asked. And so it got me thinking a lot. If you want cultural independence, you kind of sort of nebulously, esoterically kind of understand maybe at a fundamental level what that is, but to quantify it. So that's why Caleb and the rest of you are getting a very long written answer to that question. So thank you for sending that in. It boggled me, because I could have sworn that we had answered this before, and yet I never found it committed to writing, and I didn't find it in any of the archives of Late Night Coffee Talk either. So check. You're going to get it written. So anyway, all right, emails. Okay, took care of that one. All right, took care of that one. So I told you guys had poured it on tonight with the questions, and I was able to knock a bunch of the Sharia ones out. Okay. There we go. Chris Powell, thank you very much for your super chat. He says, my message is pretty simple. The next 20 years are going to be a lot of fun for this organization. Things are going to snowball for us. They already are starting to compact in more ways than one. We will Texans, in more ways than one we Texans will never bow to Sharia. Agreed. I mean, we just won't. Thank you for your super chat, Chris. Very much appreciated. All right, where's my questions? Let's get back over here. I gotta hit these email people. Excuse me. Yeah. Okay. All right. So here's the you guys send in the nostalgia questions. I think the email must have done that. All right. This comes from James. He says, what was the hardest moment in the first 5 years when you seriously considered giving up? Since you limited me down to the first 5 years, because if you had just left it wide open, I'd have said, right when I sat down to hit start on this, I seriously thought about it. No, that's a joke. Nobody write me hate mail. But the first 5 years, man, that's tough. So that would be 2010 to 2011. I wrote about that. So I wrote about it in the book, I think, or at least some part of it. Maybe it was Line in the Sand, one of the two. But, one of the things that most people don't realize is 2009 for us was a pretty magical year. It was a year of great things and a near total collapse of the organization. And it's, I mean, we were not even a full 4 years old yet. And it was, it was rough. I would say probably, and that I won't say that I considered giving up. It's just, one more thing that you gotta contend with. And you get to the point where you kind of look at it and you go, are you seriously telling me I'm going to have to rebuild this thing from scratch? Because it kind of felt like it, right? I mean, it was the first major issue that we had, I would say. And there was nothing in particular. It was just kind of a series of things, but there's this big explosion, like big. And it's one of the 2009 is one of the reasons you will hear me talk about capacity building all the time, and managed growth. And part of that is because in 2009 we had this massive explosion of people that came in, and they were, not all of them, but a large number of them were very sort of short-term thinking folks. And when you have a tsunami wave of those people coming in, you got two real problems, right? Number one is you have an infrastructure problem. You have no method or mechanism to effectively deal with that number of people. And the third one the second big problem that you have is that when those people come in, you get a tendency to start going, look, we've got to figure out how to build this airplane in the air, which some of you may have heard me say that the T&M has been an exercise in learning how to be a master aviation mechanic while the plane is in the air, right? That's where that comes from, is that time period. But you've got this massive wave of people. You don't have the infrastructure to handle them, so you start looking for people that show any sort of promise whatsoever, and so you glom onto them and you put them in you put them into the framework, and you trust them to do things, but you forget out of desperation that those people have no background. They don't know. What they know is in the right there and now, they are super mad and they want to do something about it. And independence is that thing they want to do about it. They don't know how it works, how to do it. They've got no experience in activism or or any of these things. And so, one of two things happens. They either get in over their head and they snuff out, or number two, they think they're the tail wagging the dog when they don't get the results that they think they should have, because, this stuff is just magic, right? You guys knew that this just all magically happens, right? Well, then they just feel like they're the tail wagging the dog. And if we did everything they said, everything would be hunky-dory, but they got no track record, right? And so, we had, 2009, we had, out of that, I think we had two splits. And I don't even want to call them splits, because they were just sort of clusters of people who decided they were going to do their own thing. And literally neither one of them lasted over 6 months, because when you go to start running an organization, one thing, particularly doing what we're doing, one thing you figure out right out of the gate is how hard it is, right? People think you just magic a technological infrastructure, or that, you should be able to go into a town and, there 10,000 people should show up, and because of, who you are and your charisma and your passion. And that's just not how it works. I mean, you've got to put in the work. Just running a membership system and keeping track of that, keeping track of the regulatory landscape to make sure you don't run afoul of the law. I mean, running an organization's hard, right? So 2009, that was, and I know it doesn't meet the criteria because it's not a moment, but it is a period in time that was exceedingly hard. I mean, it was right after 2009. It might have actually been 2009, where we had to make decisions about the organization like pay the server payment so we could have a website so people could still find out about the organization and still sign up for free, right? Or do whatever. We could do that, or we could buy our kids Christmas presents, right? Because nobody was paying for anything. And so that year, Kara and I, everything, you guys were the Brady Bunch, right? Her three, my three, 6 kids. Everything that they got came from the Dollar Tree. That was a rough year. And what's weird, didn't think about quitting. Just thought, man, I hope it's not always going to be like this. But what do you do? So anyway, learned a lot from that time. So I mean, people complained about our vetting process for when people enter leadership. 2009. that happened. So anyway, there you go. Okay, because I've taken multiples from the chat, I got to give the email people some love. So just bear with me, folks. Okay. Yeah, you guys are on the same wavelength tonight. Jennifer, how do you deal with people who join the movement but then disappear when things get hard? I don't. Look, I have always equated this to a certain extent with like the siege of the Alamo or the runaway scrape, right? I mean, it's easy for us to draw parallels. I mean, we're not in a crumbling Adobe mission, or we're not out there marching with our rifle in our pack running from the Mexican army. But, there are some things about this that draw some real interesting organizational leadership parallels. And, I look at people when things get tough and they decide they're going to blip out, or they're going to throw a little tantrum, or go do whatever, go get them, Tiger. I look at it kind of like dereliction of duty. If you were a part of Houston's army and you decided to peel off during the runaway scrape, you would have been called a deserter. And that's kind of the way I look at things. And people say that I may be looking at it too hard, right? That I may have, just kind of a hard butt mentality about it. But, this is exactly how I stay sane, and how I never let the same dog bite me twice. Right. There are people out there that I mean, when their leadership application comes in for the 5th time, because they've quit all the previous times before when things got tough, and they realize, hey, I have to be responsible, and it did just come across my desk, and I just laugh. I mean, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. The nerve, right? It's like, you're with Houston's army in the runaway scrape. You decide to go peel off because your feet hurt. And then you show up after the battle's over and you're like, hey guys, I'm here for the party, right? Or what? I mean, it's like, come on, man. I mean, don't do that. We got enough quitters in society, right? So we want people that are going to stick with us all the way to the end. And there are people that have had to go away because of circumstances, then come back. I get that. But this hokey pokey business, how do I deal with it? I blot them out of my mind. I do. I believe in second chances. We've given people second chances and third chances and 4th chances. But at some point, sometimes you just got to turn the page and go, look, depart from me. I know you not, right? And that happens more times than I can count. But yeah, I mean, how do you deal with it? Very effectively. From Tom. Tom says, if you could go back and tell 2005 you one thing, if you could go back and tell 2005 you one thing about where we'd be in 2025, what would it? Okay, I get the question. Tom wants to know if I could go back to 2005 and tell myself something. What would I tell myself? Well, first thing I would do is I would tell me that, hey, good news, you are in fact going to live 20 more years, right? So that would definitely have exceeded my expectations at the point. at that point, right, in 2005. Um, but the other thing is, I don't know that I would I don't know that I would let 2005 me know that we would be where we are today. I think you gotta kind of take the journey, right? Because even the hard stuff teaches lessons. And I don't think there's any shortcuts you take on the path to independence. Things may move at their pace, the time may expand or contract, but on the road to independence and self-determination, sometimes you got to figure it out. There is no manual for this stuff. There is no one size fits all mechanism. There's no other advocacy model out there that we could utilize. I mean, there's tactics, right, and tools and things like that, but nothing is ever quite suited for the work that we do. It's just the truth. So I don't know that I would tell myself anything other than I would definitely say you're going to live 20 more years. Please act accordingly. Right? Okay. Okay, let's go over here back to the chats and see what we got. Okay, this from Ron, who gifted a bunch of memberships. He said, Texit is inevitable. That is absolutely correct. And thank you. Thank you for being a channel member for 6 months. See, guys, you do a YouTube channel membership. You get your stuff all looks different, right? It pops up. It's all cool. Actually, this Q thing is nice because your question kind of goes to the top. I get to see it. Makes it stand out more. Okay. This question. Oh, I love it. The Dustin. How do we make Texas a state that gets more money from the federal government instead of the other way around? I have a feeling DC will find a way to send money to cities like New York and Seattle. Well, they do, right? I mean, we're a donor state. So for those of you who don't know, we overpay anywhere from 103 to 160 billion dollars annually into the federal system. And Dustin's asking how do we flip it? And you're not going to like my answer, right? But my answer is this: if you want to flip it and get more money from DC than we put in, then you need to elect representatives in the state government that are more like those that they elect in the state of New York and Illinois and California. And then your economy will be a wreck, right? Your living expenses will be through the roof. You'll have tax after tax after tax, and it still won't be enough to cover all the social programs. And so Washington, D.C. will send money then, right? So basically, elect people that will collapse the state of Texas, and then you can flip the script and get money from Washington, D.C. But I don't want that. I want us to not get any money from Washington, D.C. because we are not paying money to Washington, D.C. because we are no longer part of a federal union governed by Washington, D.C. So I don't know why this question made me laugh. I'm still having a hard time. I'm finding it amusing. Thank you for the question, Dustin. Oh, wow. Okay. Let's get over here to the chat. Where are we at on time? It's after the midway point. Okay. Okay, this is from Terry. He says, currently there are almost 70 Muslim mosques in the DFW area. How much of a hindrance is that group to TNM? It's not. It doesn't factor in our equation at all. Not for the kind of bigger thing that we're working, right? Texas gains its independence and we're not held down to federal constraints, then we're not worried about that. It's not kind of in our wheelhouse right now because it doesn't affect our strategy, right? It doesn't factor into our strategy, so not a big issue. Okay, Buddy says, is Texas too big to be a functional independent republic? I don't think so. I don't think it is. It's interesting. Many years ago, I had a lot of conversation with Dr. Thomas Naylor about this. His big deal. For those of you who've heard this before, bear with me. There are people here who are new that have never heard this before. But Dr. Thomas Naylor was probably one of the foremost minds on modern ideas of autonomy and decentralization. He had been a professor emeritus of economics at Duke University. He left his post to go found the Second Vermont Republic, aka an organization dedicated to extracting Vermont from the United States, which, people right now are probably scratching their heads like, what are you talking about? But anyway, but Dr. Naylor, through his academic life, had really focused on the idea of decentralization and what he would refer to as politics of scale. And he was really asking the same question, I think, or excuse me, kind of, I'm not going to say asking the question, but he was really exploring those topics pretty extensively, which I think, he never told me specifically, but I think the two books that he wrote or co-wrote before he left Duke and founded the Second Vermont, I think those books are probably what convinced him to do it, because his big thing was about politics of scale. Is a place too big to govern? And we had this conversation about Vermont. We had the conversation about Texas. And one of the things that I can remember him saying, and it's vaguely because it's been a long time, because Dr. Naylor passed many years ago. One of the things I could vaguely remember him saying in relation to this is that the scale sort of sets itself, right? So when you begin to see the breaks and the fractures, you know that you've gone beyond scale and you need to do something to decentralize. And I think I've got a copy of his book. The book that he wrote before Second Vermont Republic was called Downsizing the USA. And that was essentially the argument that he was making in that book, was that the United States had grown beyond its ability to be effectively or efficiently governed. So the U.S. is an institution in those constituent states. And, structurally, functionally, it had outgrown, it had become too big to not fail, right? And that's the contention that he was making. And I think his book, it's been a long time since I read that particular book, but he had made some specific suggestions. And, when you think about, some of the inherent functionally broken parts of the U.S. as a union of states, right now, honestly, the idea of a federal House of Representatives is kind of ludicrous, particularly with the size of the districts and how many of those people, how many people each of those folks represent. They're not representative of their constituent parts. They're too big, right? And so, but that doesn't necessarily mean because those congressional districts are too big, that doesn't mean that the state of Texas is too big. There have been some people that have proposed a model of some type of federalism for Texas, but a federalist model for Texas is not, it ignores the reality. Like I get emails all the time from people and they're like, well, are we going to break Texas into states? And it's like, no, that's not what this is. It's not the definition of a state. That's not what this is. This is not, you can't take Apple template and overlay it on the orange, right? Texas is a unitary nation state, right? People are like, well, what about the counties? Don't they? It's like, you don't understand. The state created the counties. It literally says in law that they are administrative subdivisions of the state of Texas. So there is no body to federalize, like even Switzerland, Confederatio Helvetica, right? Switzerland, it's a federation of cantons, right? These things were entities. They confederated, right? And so the United States allegedly is a federative union, right? And so you had these independent states who came together and confederated. They created a federal system to govern certain aspects, right? That's not what we did. It's not what the counties are. It's not how we're made. But there are people that have proposed some things related to that. I'm too much to get into right now. I'm not a fan. I don't think we need to break Texas apart. Um, but I also believe, when you talk about too big, I think from a population standpoint, it does provide some questions for Texans, but honestly, not about independence or how we should reshuffle, but really, I think your question should be more accurately pointed toward the urgency of solving or of independence and how it solves the immigration situation, right? And I don't just mean from Mexico and Central America and South America and everywhere else. I mean from all the other states in the United States as well. Texas was we benefited from massive net in migration that was counted during the last census, and that is again, it becomes about scale. Do you have the infrastructure? You gotta understand, immigration arguments. You break them down 9 ways from Sunday. There's all kind of different ways to look at it. But if you wanted to get super pragmatic about the immigration argument, beyond every other argument out there, if you want to get super pragmatic about it, you would say that you have to be able to provide infrastructure for, at a baseline, your population growth for your existing people and for what your infrastructure will handle. So if you're building infrastructure and how long it takes for new housing starts and you take all these things into account. You take into account what the job market might need, right, or whatever. Your immigration amount should never be greater than what your infrastructure growth can handle. Right now, there's a difference. People are going to say, well, what about the settlers who came here? There was no infrastructure. You go through these phases of migration waves, right? So when a place first has to be settled, you typically will invite people. If you don't have the manpower to do it yourself, this unrealized frontier, you have this wave to say, we must develop this place if we're going to, continue to claim title to it, right? So you do that and you bring people in and they settle and they kind of tame the land and everything else. And then that polity, as it grows, it continues to build infrastructure. You get people that have a natural population growth rate, plus whatever sort of migration you get. But you reach this tipping point, right, where your infrastructure is, your ability to, the infrastructure that you have and your ability to continue to expand that infrastructure is just suitable for the population growth of the people that are there. So, birth rates, death rates, whatever that population growth is. And so the growth of your infrastructure should always meet or exceed the population growth rate for your native born population. And at the moment that you turn the tap open, like if you can create a gap there where your infrastructure growth, your potential there can be greater and faster, and you want to open it up, you have the ability to do so. Where it is right now, it's kind of like when you're in pain and you go to the doctor and the doctor says, here's your medication to take care of the pain. You say, Doc, I'm not hurting yet. The doc says, you will. And I'm telling you to do this because you need to get ahead of it, because if you ever try to, if you ever get into massive pain, you're always playing catch up with it. You're trying to catch up to it. Well, that's exactly where we are right now. Unrestricted mass migration has led to such infrastructure strain that we're seeing negative effects on native population. That is the real pragmatic way to look at the immigration situation. And so until Texas can get a handle on its own immigration policy and border policy, aka becoming a self-governing independent nation, then we will always be beholden to what the federal system thinks that we can absorb. And let's be honest, the federal system can't figure anything out. They have one size fits none policies. They think we should open the borders wide up because Pennsylvania has plenty of infrastructure to go around and whatever, but they don't go there. They come here. Why? Because we're the 8th largest economy in the world. They come here and they stay here because we can't say, cool, come into Pennsylvania and stay there, right? You don't get to move here. We don't have the ability to do that until we become a self-governing independent nation. I think I may have gone a little far afield on that one, buddy, but I think you understand, for us to be a functional constitutional republic, it's about politics of scale. That is, AKA the government has to be at the right size as the population, but that's not just government, it's all infrastructure. I think maybe I covered that. Okay. Oh, 8:51. Oof. All right, here we go. Hey, thank you so much, Lee, for your super chat. He says, Daniel, thank you for looking at my question last coffee talk regarding intellectual and military property. Have you determined how you're going to answer it? You suggested a Texas Partisan article. Love you, brother. Love you too, brother. And yes, that is also in the queue. And these things are, I'm going to let you guys in on a secret. May not be much of a secret. But if you want to know, like, one of the hardest things, people ask all the time, like, what's the hardest part of what you have to do as part of being in the TNM? And I'm going to tell you what it is. It's writing. I'm adequate, but it does my head in like nobody's business, and it really does. So let me make a note. Lee's article. Yeah, and if I remember correctly, where I left off on that was I think it's in the proofing stage. So I think we're pretty close, and I think that one was going to be turned into a couple of different FAQs for the Texas Now site. So not just the Texan Partisan. All right, thank you for that, Lee. And again, thank you for your super chat. Oh, this is a fun one. When Texas leaves, maybe we get on the foreign aid list. What was that? My dad used to say that all the time. He said we ought to secede, declare war, immediately surrender, and apply for foreign aid. I thought that was pretty funny when he would say that. Ooh. Okay. That Texan says, good evening, Mr. Miller. If you had to pick one, by the way, your profile picture's killing me. If you had to pick one, it's going to be tough. Yes. What would you say will be Texas' greatest advantage as an independent nation state? Ooh, man. If I had to pick one, what will our greatest advantage be? Okay. So I will draw your attention back to the principle. So, the TNM, we have our mission and we have our principles, and there's a principle in there called indomitability. And it specifically talks about an acknowledgement that there is no problem or challenge that Texans can't overcome without our individual ingenuity and collective will, right? Indomitability. It's the spirit that Texans are known for around the world. Never quit, never give in. There's not, as my dad used to say, there ain't a horse that ain't been rode, and ain't a cowboy that ain't been throwed, right? That was the thing he would say all the time. And that's just kind of the way that it is, right? It's the way that we look as Texans at the world. And so, people would probably try to nail down something like, our economy, or, what we'll be able to do with our monetary system. I mean, those are all great advantages. The fact that we will be a center for innovation in the Western Hemisphere and the world, the fact that, there's so many of those, right? And I think probably people thought I would go to one of those very wonkish ones, but I'll tell you, the fact that we would be unbound by federal constraints and we have that indomitable spirit, it would be like unleash, let the tiger loose. It's just kind of like that. We're like this raging bull in this pen, just stomping and spitting to get out. And we got the federal government that's got us corralled. And it's like, what happens? What does that bull do when you open that pen? Well, it runs. Yeah, I mean, it just goes, right, and then it goes and it does its thing, and I think that's who we are. I think we're raring to go. So I think that indomitable spirit would be our greatest advantage. Um, and I hope you were talking about from a Texas standpoint, not just an individual standpoint, because that's the way that I took the question. But anyway, that was a good one. I like that one. Thank you very much. I'm gonna be laughing about your profile picture later. I'm just gonna randomly think about it and laugh. Okay, let's see here. Gosh, okay, I might be able to. Let me see if I can grab one more. Okay, yeah, we'll end on some self-deprecation. Lisa emailed us. She says, "What's the biggest strategic mistake you made in the early years that you learned from?" Biggest strategic mistake. Look, I'll tell you. Almost almost every major mistake that I have made in the last 20 years in relation to T&M has been related to personnel and people. Invariably. I mean, but if you think about it for a moment, we talk about this as a people movement, right? Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution, all political powers inherent in the people. So at no stage is this ever divorced from people, right? I mean, that's just the way that it is. This whole thing will invariably be tied to people. And with all the good and all the bad that entails. And so you think about the gamut, the entire continuum of stories and people and things that you've run into. And so what is the biggest strategic mistake? Because there have been lots of tactical mistakes too, but the biggest strategic mistake, I just don't know. If I think about it, because you said strategic, so I'm trying to think what the strategic ones were, right? So, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say you stumped the answer man, but I'm trying to figure out how I can specifically answer your question without walking over the same ground. I think perhaps if we're going to look at it strategically, then we have to look at it on the path. Oh, okay. I know what it was. I know what my answer will be. And my answer will be coercing, not coercing, that's the wrong word, but having to tolerating browbeating a legislator to do what they had signed a pledge to do and not outing that person. Basically, just dropping the hammer. My strategic. So I would say that my biggest strategic mistake was hesitation. My gut told me that we needed to drop the hammer, and I didn't. So oddly, yeah, although most of them surround people, most of those sorts of mistakes, the biggest strategic mistake, honestly, I think we would have been much better off had we just dropped the hammer. Maybe if we're going to talk about strategy, I mean that one would have felt better, but perhaps it even gets down to not trusting my gut in some situations, right? When I kind of at a visceral level know that this is where we need to go and just kind of block it out and just go do the thing. I know that's not very specific. Some of it I can't really get specific about, but it was a really, really good question. Okay, last one. Trading for Science says, what's going on? Mexico and the U.S. Can Texas take advantage being its own country? I do not know really what that question is asking. What's going on in Mexico? They have got they're They're about a hair's breadth away from a revolution down there. They've already got one state that's going to have an independence referendum, and maybe by the time it's over with, they'll have more. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of folks in Mexico City, let me tell you. All right, friends, that is it. That is our time. So, look, I want to thank you guys for all your thoughtful questions tonight. Thank you for everybody who watched and participated. Obviously, as I said earlier, we will not be gathering on Thursday night because it'll be Thanksgiving. Although that would be cool. You know, we could share some turkey together or something, but alas, it is not to be. So you will see me a week from that Thursday, whatever day that is. That's December 1st, right? No. Oh, no. So it's 27th. So it'll be the 4th. See, my dates are all jacked up, people. I'm sorry. So December the 4th is when we will see each other again. So you'll get a message from me. But while I'm here, I'll go ahead and wish you and yours a very happy Thanksgiving. And let me just go ahead and say that I am very thankful for every single solitary one of you that still keeps the flame of Texas independence alive. And with that, friends, let me go run the gauntlet and remind you a big thank you to our channel members that we were talking about earlier. Look at them. Their names all scrolling at the bottom, being all cool YouTube channel members. And so thank you. Big thank you to all those folks. But a quick reminder, if you are not a registered user on TNM Social, you need to go do that right now. Head over to tnm.social. And by the way, you need to download the mobile app. You know, it's kind of weird to see the number of people that have accounts over there that still haven't downloaded the mobile app. It absolutely, it's like, man, why would you not download the mobile app, right? And when you're over there, you can get a link to do that, right? But also what's super cool is there's a link where you can go and just download the app right now. Go to tnm.me/app and go download the version for your phone, both iPhone and Android. The app is available. You know, we spent a lot of time developing that and making a place for you. And if your thing is you want to connect with others who believe like you that Texas should be a self-governing independent nation, then that's where you go do it. It's TNM Social and through the mobile app. Additionally, my friends, if you have not, hang on, I got to get this thing off of here. What is going on? It's covering everything up. If you have not already, what is going on? Why does this show up like this? Sorry, guys. I get cranky at this time. I'm definitely undercaffeinated. Anyway, now that all the clutter's off the screen, if you have not already pledged your support, go over and register your support right now for the TNM. Go to tnm.me/vote, register your support, get plugged in to the organization that is making Texas independence a reality. Remember, I said 2005, there were half a dozen of us. Now there are over, 100,000 times the number that we started with, over that. So I would say that's good growth for anybody, right? And you can be counted among that number. So go do that right now, tnm.me/vote. Additionally, Black Friday's coming up. People are going to be running deals and specials, but look, who needs that crap, right? There's tons of stuff out there, but where are you going to get your official logoed merchandise? All your Texas gear, your TNM gear, your Texian Partisan gear, you're going to get it at TexianStore.com. And by the way, for the YouTubers, this is not a sponsored video. This is me just doing what I do, right? But go to TexianStore.com. And of course, donate today, right? Donate to the TNM. Head to donate.tnm.me. And if you have not been paying attention to the articles on Texian Partisan, go to TexianPartisan.com. Been a lot of great stuff over there. And for those of you that had basic questions about Texas, what's going to happen to Social Security? What about the military? What about? Go to texitnow.org and look at the FAQ over there. Look, it's the largest collection, and we're adding more. You heard me talk about it maybe with Lee a moment ago. So definitely those things are happening. So with that, my friends, I do believe that, as they say in the industry, that is a wrap. Yeah, I think we're done. So if I didn't get to your question, sorry about that. Maybe yours will get turned into an article. Otherwise, come back for the next coffee talk and we'll see if we can't get to it then. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you with the words I leave you with every time we're together. They're not my words. They're the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now, and the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.